focus on learning and focus on children as a particular age group. Obviously this module is designed around looking at children and youth sport, so I felt there's very much a need to kind of focus on the learning concepts that may influence your work with children. Children learn and develop very quickly by playing, learning and experimenting. They begin to get a sense of their own identity and how they may be different from others. Organised activities can help develop their learning in an informal setting. So how do children learn? They learn through all of their senses, by taste, touch, seeing, hearing and smelling. They learn by watching and copying people close to them, and they learn by language and behaviour. And that play environment is very much that first kind of initial point in that learning process for young children. As we move, up the age group or, maturational status within a child, there'll be different kind of elements to learning which will occur, which will be discussed as we progress through this module. So in this focus of children, rather than actually looking at the coaching context, I've actually pulled out some educational theory and psychology around learning in children. Piaget, 1936, he's well known in education and psychology and described his work as genetic epistemology, which looks at the origins of thinking. He was the first psychologist to make a systematic study of cognitive development, and he was very much focused on this kind of child and youth age group. Children are born with a very basic mental structure, genetically inherited and evolved, and on which all subsequent learning and knowledge is then based. So to Piaget, cognitive development was a progressive reorganisation of mental processes as a result of biological maturation, but also the environmental experience. So kids will learn from what's going on around them. So if we're in an immersive learning environment where we're getting positive, coaching or delivery, then obviously that's going to have a positive effect on our cognitive development within whatever it is area they're working in, whether it's, really young children in that kind of key movement skill development, which we're going to progress to look at in more detail in future weeks, or whether it's actually working with a more skilled performer. Children construct an understanding of the world around them, then experience discrepancies between what they already know and what they discover in their environment. So they learn by doing. His theory also focused on schemas. These things are basically the building blocks of knowledge, the basic building blocks of intelligent behaviour and a way of organising our knowledge. A schema can be very much defined as a set of linked mental representations of the world, which we use both to understand and respond to situations. So, for example, a child will soon learn, what is hot and what is cold, and then respond to what that feels like. So they may be told by their parents, don't put your hand near the fire, don't touch the pan, it's hot. They may experience by touch, by accident, or by doing something they shouldn't be doing, and will then learn to behave appropriately. So it might be being told to do something, the touch of something, the feel, actually that situation that they're in. So there's obviously lots of things that develop as we progress from a small child, a baby, right through into adulthood. We're all continually learning and using these schemas to actually develop our learning processes. Another theorist, Wadsworth, 2004, suggests the schemata, which is the plural schema, be thought of as an index card filed in the brain, each one telling the individual how to react to an incoming stimuli or information. So when we're responding to something, we may refer back to previous learning and several index cards, which will then enforce our future practice. Other key elements to Piaget's theory was around simulation, which is basically use an existing schema to deal with a new object or new situation. So in a sporting context, it could be that I have experienced playing badminton as a child, and then, my friends asked me to go down the park and play tennis. Well, I'm using the existing schema of motor development and motor programs I've had from playing badminton to then apply that into a tennis scenario. Accommodation. This happens when existing schemas knowledge do not work and needs to be changed to deal with a new objective or situation. So I think I chose quite a good example actually. If you think about badminton in terms of accommodation, so I might think, I've played badminton, it's a racket sport, I understand it, and then I'm going to go play tennis. Well, obviously the action and the movement of the wrist from a stiff wrist in tennis to the flicky wrists that you're going to need for badminton shots are very different. So this is maybe where our existing schema may inhibit or not work in the new context, and how we maybe need to adapt and change that to apply to the new sporting situation. this can apply in all elements of learning, and obviously just giving you some sporting examples. The final part of his theory, look at the stages of development. So development is a biological based and changes in a child as a child matures. He believed that children go through 4 universal stages of cognitive development. Obviously, I'm just looking at one theory. There's lots of other different theories for learning and development. So, don't think this is the Bible on it, but this is a really good example. So your first stage, which is in infancy, is the sensory motor stage. This stage consists of 6 sub-stages. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of this model now. If you want to go and do a little bit more reading and look at this in a little bit more detail, there's a plethora of information online and within the library on this topic. So as I said, this stage consists of 6 sub-stages that shows significant gains in thinking as they progress through infancy. Children are using their physical and motor skills and their senses to explore their world and develop their cognitive understanding. Okay, so the second stage is the pre-operational stage. This is in toddler and early childhood. And this is probably the stage that you're probably going to start to possibly be working in as a coach. The younger kind of little kickers, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. So these are some of the things you may expect to experience within this stage. In this stage, children are less reliant on senses and physical exploration, and according to the theory, are illogical thinkers. During this stage, young children are able to think about things symbolically, so they're starting to think for themselves a little bit and take some of their experiences, they've explored themselves, and start to think for themselves slightly. Concrete and operational stage. So this is very much around that, primary school into early adolescence. In this stage, which aligns to kind of the middle childhood, children are beginning to be able to demonstrate more logically. So from that illogical process at the second stage to a more logical process of thinking in this third stage. Although they still need to concrete materials to help them reach and correct conclusions, but it marks that beginning of that logical thought process. So basically, children start to work things out internally in their head, rather than physically trying things out via trial and error in the real world, which you will probably see more in that younger age group. They'll learn more by doing less than thinking. And then the final area we're going to look at is obviously that adolescence into adulthood is the formal operational stage. So this final stage is basically the rest of our lives. He believed that once we've reached, sort of the age of 12, obviously maturational status and, cognitive and mental ability may impact on the age, but it's around that sort of, early adolescence, where we are capable of much more abstract thinking, able to solve problems in our heads, and we can deal with much more complex issues. And again, so you may be working with this older age group where we need to adapt the way that we coach and that we work to fit this stage of thinking and thought process.